All right, we're going to start with this half Viparita Karani. So in this pace of movement right now to start, I want you to have that stillness in the rhythm of your hips, because they're very solid and centered on the bolster. Your bolster's at the very edge of the foot of your chair, right along that same line. When you're on your back, for those getting centered in, you want to lower down so the back of your head, it could be on a blanket. You might feel comfortable enough without that blanket, nothing that's going to push your chin to the point where there's too much flexion in the cervical vertebrae, okay? So when you're in this path of creating motion through the ribs, what you may work with is a sandbag across the rib cage or without. That extra circulation along the pace of the breath may bring you into the practice nicely, just to slow and really feel the specific experience of embodiment, right? The sand allows you to notice that embodied experience for this portion of the body, but also it's quite unique with the weight, how that kind of has a trickle out effect into your centering. Your skin has been pressed into in an important location where there's heart and lungs and the essential service of those organs for your whole body. So let's come into closing eyes, centering the breath, feeling the core motion. And with that inhale, elevation of the core of the body. So you feel a little bit of that lift. I know I mentioned the floating ribs earlier, but that experience of movement in the mid body. And on the out breath, feeling a very slight amount of motion of the navel and that centering space in the core. So the elbows are out at cactus. They could also be straight and open from the armpit out to the palm. And what I encourage you to balance right now in your spine is possibly to feature moving the arms so that you can stretch the armpits. So that will likely be a little movement back behind you. And as you feel the arms feature motion, feel the spine arching, and that is a little increased with the arms moving back. Can you feel the subtleties and then the relaxation of the legs? So as we are arriving in the beginning of this practice, maintain the balance of the upper, and then we're going to change the lower. So the legs are still on the chair, but we'll slide the feet to the edge of the chair and move the knees outwards and bring the feet together and the knees releasing into external rotation. So they just open. Now the circulation current in the spine will likely have a little bit of a kind of a squishiness. Now we don't want that squishiness to be pushy and tensifying in the spine. So what I want you to encourage you is to really feel the inner thigh, the elaborate nature of that circulation in the inner legs, because they're an extension of our core. So if this is feeling too much pressure in your back, you can come back to the first position with the legs resting on the chair in half Viparita Karani, or you can have the feet in Baddha Konasana together and the knees out. How far they go out is interesting in this position because you have gravity taking you to the position. This is a really nice way to do Baddha Konasana because you'll probably get your edge and you can't really stuff any props in under your legs. So you get what you get, and if it gets too much, you can always bring your knees to point a little closer to the ceiling, and then let them butterfly back open. Feel the ribs expand. This is probably the best time to move your sandbag aside just temporarily, because what you might feel is the ribs expand, but also the legs have that similar positional angle as the ribs. So having that sandbag away might allow you to feel the movement of the breath, feel the fluttering of the core, and the actual structural expansion and external rotation. So with a few more moments, feeling all these areas kind of start to peel open. The feet don't have to push deep together, they could be slightly apart. And then start to move the ribs back into the bolster, like you're pressing the back of the pelvis into the bolster. Have that be the condition of movement. And now let's start guiding the legs towards each other with the knees bending. And as you feel your feet step on the very edge of that chair, we're going to start to flow our body so that we carefully have the back of our head on the floor or the blanket. And you're going to push into your chair seat with your feet, lift up your hips, and then turn the bolster across. So it's across underneath your spine. So instead of vertical to the wall, it's horizontal across the mat. So from the back of the pelvis, it's quite nice because now you have this larger backing to your pelvis. Okay, so feel how this easygoing bridge pose, because of the bolster, we put a block between the legs. It could be a spacing so it's very high up between the knees. But when I place the block there, I'm going to focus on using a block for this, number one. But the feet, I want them to space themselves out enough so I'm not trying to squirm to push them close, the feet closer together. I want them to be separated. And we have the chair against the wall for this reason. So have the spine centering back, blanket free, hands onto the thighs, feel that pronounced rib cage. And then with that encouraging support of the wall, I want you to feel your feet push as if they're pushing in towards the wall though. Feel them push towards the seat of the chair, directly towards the wall. So you become aware of the hips, and then the arms are going to lower down besides your bolster, and you're going to lift up your hips and emphasize the quads, lifting, lengthening, and you can have your arms go back overhead, which is quite nice to work with. Be sure you're on that chair with your feet, and that circulation all the way up through the spine to the base of the shoulders right now. And then for me, I feel it's up in my shoulder bracket where it tops off. And then when you lower down, you're sort of stopped by the bolster, right? You kind of can't get that full spinal massage. So I want you to let your spine land. And then here we'll bring the feet off the chair. Arms are going to go straight open to a T, depending on how much space you have around you. Okay. And then knees will go to the right side, squeeze the block, center, and to the left side. This is about movement, working with motion, and guiding the lower back to opening. So rather than going and stopping at a side, work your way so that you keep movement going side to side. Your feet might cuddle together, that's okay. But have the block as the spacer to help open up our back. Okay, so I want you to get a feel of that spacer of the block. It could go one notch wider, You might notice that if you place the block, maybe it's a little bit lower than right at the knees. And then closing your eyes and feel when the knees go side to side. And do you notice any more space in your back? I do. It's kind of a mirror effect of the knees a little wider, the back opening, but they're both good. And then we take our legs back in center. We remove the block temporarily and we take a sandbag and we'll place that at our feet. This is a fairly active flow of postures today in some way, even though they're all a bone therapeutic, right? Restorative therapy in the bones, they are rather continuous. So now we have our sand on our feet and our legs up, and feel where the circulation flows down through the legs into the hips and that arch through the spine. When the feet are flexing straight above your hips, find stillness. After all that movement, you want to find the stillness almost as if your core has a wide foundation at the hips, at the pelvis, and then bring your hands together, interlace your fingers, turn the palms to the ceiling, and then send your arms back overhead. Can you keep the feet in about the same spacing? This is a good one to notice if your legs are starting to flow towards your chest. I encourage you to try to keep them to move a tiny bit away from you to the point where you still feel certain with the sandbag. It still feels rather supported by the feet. They're not losing it, but you're recruiting your stomach muscles. So get that sweet spot where you just feel the lower belly slightly, kind of a little tingle there of recruitment. The arms might get a little bit tired of reaching, so feel the side waist lengthen. Feel the sides of the core, especially from the navel, that belly button area outwards, and then straight back, hands separating, palms open, and then feel where the back of your arms can actually reach. If you have difficulty kind of continuing that energy in the arms, you get sleepiness, or it's just too passive of a position for the arms for you to effort, I want you to either have your arms here trying to reach back, or you can use a block between your hands wide. This doesn't mean you have to have the block in the air. You can have it touching completely, resting the block on the floor, wide spacing, and hold on to that and see if that helps you activate the side body and help it lengthen. You know, with the feet feeling centered. If you could feel this vibrant when you stand during the day, right? It's so typical we stand on our feet, right? So when we're upside down with them pushing up, it has a little bit of a different, I don't know, excitement to it versus standing down into them. So it might help that core body. And as we let go of the position now, we're going to bend the knees and take the hands to your sand and move that aside, just nearby, and feet on the chair. Push into your feet to lift your hips up, and then you're going to slide your bolster off of your mat. And now, so good, you can bring your hands down so they're towards the wall, towards your chair. Hips are up. You can either clasp your hands. I like to just keep them right now for this one, just simple, just hands simple. Palms are turning open though. Try to turn the hands open. Now we're going to lower the spine down. Try to go really slow, easy for the spinal column. Good. All right, now as you lower down all the way to the back of the pelvis, we're going to roll to the left side, and your mat's pretty much clear except for the chair, right? So what I want you to do is take a position now so that we are going to bring our right foot under the chair, our left knee bending and left foot to the inside of that right thigh. So you might sit on a blanket here. You might find that you're comfortable without. It depends on your flooring, really. I'm going to add I think I'll take the blanket so it's a quarter full. I'm kind of up in the air about that, but I'll go quarter full and sit my seat on it, and then rest of my left leg will be on that. I'll give you a little bit of a hint. We are going to be doing pigeon pose from this one, so you might want a blanket nearby to add under your seat. So with this elevation, I've got this knee situation so that it's kind of going to elevate because the blanket's entirely under me. So we're going to add a sandbag. That's going to be the best item for the leg versus a block for this one, because you're already, some of you might be on a blanket. Now, when you put that sand on, kind of feel what your natural arc is in your rib cage. And, you know, in this path, what I've enjoyed working with, I don't have my belt to use right now, but trying to get this this rib section to guide that mid body to lift. So the upper spine, like it moves in and up without pushing my head and tightening my neck. So I want you to get a feel of the center body being so important here when you bring your arm on the chair. And then when you lean your right arm onto the chair, you can either reach back so that, or reach to the back of the chair. Maybe some of you can hold that back bar of the chair. You kind of tilt the chair up so you have this very intense support. Some might decide, that's too much. I'm going to put my head rested into my right hand, and that's good. But I want you to get a feel for how this left side lengthens, and perhaps you can let that left arm reach behind you today, or it can stretch up over the side. I think she's going to take back her spot. I really might be in for it on this one. This is Mindy's spot right over here. She's usually under the yoga rope. But there's no big rope there, so she doesn't have this little canopy over her, I think. I'm not sure. So feel where this side body lengthens. Encourage that the ribs are motioning back and around, right? So we're not trying to rotate and drop into the chair space. We're trying to rotate back, okay? So with that left arm either reaching or behind you, take a few more moments where your head is supported. I don't want to have you having your neck try to tilt or torque. Feel where you're really comfortable with this certain length of this left side. Just give it a few more moments. But this side length is an important study for where we're going with pigeon today. So we're going to do left hip. So feel that left side lengthening. Breathe. Only keep it so the spine is really safe here, not any torque or extra twist, just the side body. Okay. So get a feel for the tone in the waist. Breathe a few more. Now with this rib path, right, this left rib path, we're not going to lose that opening that you were just getting going. Keep in mind, some of these are cycles of moving the spine in, moving the costals open, helping the body out of kind of depressed states that the structure gets into, and then the mind too. So we're going to keep it in motion. So when we let go of the position of leaning into the chair, we slide up, and your body might get a little cranky going from this opening and then it has to kind of close back in, shutters in. So when you're here, I want you to move your sand aside for the moment, and then you're going to turn to your left leg and then move this left knee off of the blanket, and then you're going to pivot away from the wall into left leg pigeon. And you know, the interesting thing about coming into pigeon from a seated versus like down dog pattern is that your left foot might go up a little easier. It might not want to go anywhere, and it might hook back to the blanket. But feel how the block, do you got blocks? Okay. Block or bolster will work on this. Either one, whatever is easy for you to grab. You're going to take your blocks or bolster to the right corner. This is the side, left side that you're working on. Just a moment ago seated, and you're going to lower your elbows onto those, either of those objects. It's a bolster, blocks, a blanket, anything that you have, a cat. Probably not the cat. Okay, to get a feel when you are leaning into it, into the elbows, that continuous awareness of this left side. So stay with this pigeon. I'm going to do a inquiry review here, if that makes any sense, but don't change your position. But so the key was that we have the side, right? The side length. So when you turn, it's a pretty subtle, right? You turn your ribs, so you're facing the other direction, but you're still working in that side, but now you've sunk into your hip. A little bit of a hip dip. It's a hip dip. So a few more moments here. Okay, feel where that center is in the sitting bone, where the balance might be in the back of the pelvis. Try to remove a deepening arch in your spine. So if you're really pushing and lifting up your brain, you might let your brain weight sink. Breathe. Okay, now we'll go to the second side. Carefully navigate for simplicity, okay? So we come back center, bring the right leg up. And then if you feel like doing any seated forward bends, you could right here, that's fine. I'm gonna try to keep it classic and very simple-minded. So I turn to my other side. And when I'm on this direction, hopefully we'll all stay connected with the focus. We have the left foot to the wall. Scoot yourself however you need so you can feel the wall with your foot. Really important. Sand on the right thigh. Yeah, and when we change kind of our arrangement with our props, it is a little bit unfamiliar. So just give yourself some time to get into the change of it. It's a good time to create a little change at the home bone practice. So when you push into your left foot, the leg may have a little bowed shape, right? It's not going to be entirely straight out of the hip chamber. So just feel yourself push and then turn to the right. Let that waist reach out of the pelvic basin, right? So the vine of the spine also reaches up and out. And then as you lean into that left arm, you get to provide the balance that feels supportive with the left arm. So you might find getting that hand on the bar of the chair is really critical for you to be inspired to lengthen. Sometimes putting your elbow on the chair is just not enough inspiration. So take the time to research this right arm lifting and leaning into the chair, and then encourage that ribs to spatially turn open. If this is usually inspiring for you to get your sides to open, if side sage, those types of poses are really helpful for you, then work with this on trying to get the back bar of the chair or reach to the wall. And then get a feel of that turn. Now the neck might be something you have to adjust, turning your head towards the left arm, feeling your head tilt, feel the right arm reach. And with that length in the side body, extend fully. Good. Keep that rotation through the waistband. Push into your foot. And now you can tell that there is something that could have been added to this. So when you come out, notice the progression. So I can turn, put my left hand on my right knee, right, and feel progressions of rotation. But when I take that stand off of the right thigh, I'm going to pivot. There's just too many things you can add in here that you start to have memory of. You're going to pivot and bring that right knee open and that top of the left thigh resting, okay? The blocks can go to the left side. They could go in front of you to start, but I encourage you to take away that squeeze out of your spine right now. So if I lean into it, I'm going to work a bit here with lengthening back through that left leg. Feel the reach through the torso. And then as my hip starts to balance, I can take the blocks to the left. I can center the blocks depending on how your hip feels, right? This side, maybe you feel a little bit more challenge. So you're going to be centered with the blocks, or maybe you're going to take them to the left, all depending on how it feels. So flow through that right hip. Like I mentioned, it's all a continuous directional path into the hip. Okay, feel where the ribs center. Feel where the back of the pelvis stays balanced. And with that reaction in your hip, I want you to carefully motion. So your blocks are maybe left for some of us on the left side. I want you to motion so you bring your body back into center. And then we take our blocks aside, keep them right beside the edge of your mat. And when you come up to table, which is cat, cow, directionally, kind of visualize before you even get yourself to the knees, like what would cat, cow visually be for you, right? It's the rounding, flexing of a spine, and that reach of the rib cage, right? It's the arch. So one is darker, right? And one is a little bit sunnier, I find, right? So when you hook your toes under left foot and you start to move yourself up and to table, you'll probably need to adjust your blanket so it's just right. And when you come down, I'm going to give you a little bit of a observation for yourself that you have your hands and your knees so they feel like they're plenty wide, but not, the feet aren't going to go beyond the chair legs, right? So that's a little bit of a boundary that you want to stay within, okay? Which is kind of helpful for this. Now, when I round the back and feel the chin move down and in towards the spine, and then arch the spine. Okay, so round the back, feel if you have that fluidity through your ribs as well. So really push the ground away. And then as you arch the spine, can you take a few of these where you're moving fully through your torso? Okay, so you're going to spread the hands out wider on your mat. And then as you launch yourself forward, you're going to lower your hips a tiny bit. Now, if this is too much on your back, right, you put more height under your legs, right? So you could put another blanket, you could add a bolster. So depending on how the back feels, if you notice nothing but a little bit of stimulation of strength in your back muscles, that's plenty. But when we come back now, toes under, lift the knees, be aware that you have a chair behind you as you push back to downward dog. You might walk your hands back a bit so you actually kind of feel the connection of the chair behind you. Like it might give you some direction. You could sit on it if you feel like taking a seat, that's no problem, and come back into down dog. But when you notice your options, yeah, no problem. If you decide to walk back your hands, take a seat and feel your spine from a seated position. But I'm going to keep it with the dog pose right now. So as I push into my hands, we're going to walk our hands back forwards, lower down the knees, stretch your hips down into up dog, inhale. Keep movement going. Exhale, toes under, knees up. We'll do two more. Inhale, knees down, stretch the toes back, lift up the head, bring the chin up, and then come back. So it's not a deepening hip crease. You're just trying to get flow through the body. One more time, knees down, lengthen. May feel like there is a little bit of picking up the pace going on now. So now when you come back to table, what we're going to do is lower down all the way onto the belly. We're going to tuck in our blocks right under the front of the shoulders, right on the sides of the chest. So if you're not sure what is this, we're face down. I'm going to take my blanket in and I'm going to place the blanket rolled up on its corner under my forehead. Now my elbows are out, my hands are down, and I'm resting my head into my blanket. Let my legs be comfortably separated and focus here on the shoulders back, the ribs stretching forwards, and really get those blocks in so that your blocks are positioned right at the corners of your chest. Right? So this is not where you need to go right now, is to get on your kneeling position and put your blocks up. That's not the goal right now. But I want you to be prone, face down. So it's a little more strengthening for your body to release into the lungs. It's good for the calming the respiratory system. It's really easy on the respiratory system. This is called proning, right? What they do in hospitals often so people can breathe is to prone them. Prone the patient. So we're doing a little proning work here. So we have our forehead down, and I want you to bring your arms back though, so the palms are open, and you're actually using those blocks to kind of lift up those arms without you having to nag your neck muscles to get the arms to lift up like we've done previously in locust pose. So head on the blanket, feel your arms reach back, like you're trying to do some repetitive arm pulsing exercise. I want you to keep them rather still, but feel the arms reach back and start to turn your palms towards the sides of your body, so inwards. If you're getting tired in your arms, you just let your hands relax on the floor and take a few moments and breaths, and then come back up. I suppose moments and breaths are the same thing, but there you go. So keep going with it for about another minute. So we have that reach of the arms, and we're working now with starting to get into the lower back strengthening. So feel your arms reach back, feel the shoulders kind of boost the strength into your shoulders and also into the collarbones. The importance is to have your head down on the support of a blanket, something that's higher than, that's about the height of your blocks, or maybe a tiny bit lower. Belly pushes into the floor. Okay, now arms relaxed. Okay, now as you bring your blocks out, push them away, hands, elbows back, hands down, elbows back. Start to push into the floor. I'm going to push my legs out into my chair legs, so I have them as a kind of a brace. Now, oftentimes in these baby back bends, you can use a belt around the legs, so not holding the feet, right, but keeping the legs from going out too far. So now we got a chair, so this really helps. My legs aren't going to go up very far, but what's happening for many of us is the feet turn out, right? So I want you to feel, so it's the side of your foot or your ankle that's at the chair, not turning the feet out, right? It's not like a frog pose. So press down, and then when you lift up your head, you're going to press down and then put your elbows on the floor and lift up into Sphinx pose. Thank goodness for elbows. Okay, feel the elbows, try to reach the chest forward. This is a cat pose too, I think. This is another version of what cats do. Sphinx pose. Okay, now if your feet still want to turn out, they get that way. I want you to lift up your feet a little bit so you can feel the chair that's back there, I'm assuming. And know there's limitations with your legs moving outwards. So now that the hamstrings are really getting sturdy from this position, it really springs that hamstring, doesn't it? Now lower down the top of the foot, and then you're going to ease your way back. Okay, we're going to go into a lunging pattern. So I want you to slide your hands back and then fingers open, turn out the hands a little bit, they can turn out, and then elbows back, lift up the chest, good, kind of sweep through the rib cage. And then as you come back to table, you're going to grab a hold of a couple blocks, turn them up so they're at the mid-height, and step a right foot between them. Okay, just start that lunge process with the back knee on the blanket or off of it. You choose. So if I lift up my back knee, I might put my blocks up a notch. But I want to encourage you to get a feel for where that left knee is stretching back thigh reaching, whether the knee is on the blanket or up reaching through the air. So feel that right knee above the ankle, and can you come up a little bit higher and try to get your side waist to also reach. Okay, you might be clamoring for balance with this one. So steady the focus with the legs as being your support here, especially down to this right sitting bone, and get a feel here for the ribs centering back. Bring your hands down, step your left foot forwards, place a block between the knees, and come into chair pose. Okay, so as I'm finding with these poses, relearning them again, that I tend to put a little too much weight on my feet and not really trust the weight onto the weight forward on my toes. So trust the weight into your heels right now and feel if you can reach your hips back a bit. Be so careful on the knees. So if you feel like it's really tightening around the knees, they feel like they have an extra squish around them, then what you'll likely do is stand up a little bit. So I want you to find that sweet spot between standing upright and bending. And then feel when you bend, how you push your tush back. And you begin that process of strengthening around the legs and then around the knees. That's nice. So get a feel for the hips. There you go. Yeah, the block is helpful, not essential, but helpful. Now, as you reach your hands down to the floor, you want to keep that block stuck between the knees, and it could be so that your block is really a little bit lower, but it's still between the knees. And when you're here, can you bring your hands to the back of your legs and let your spine drain out? Let your head nod side to side, but feel the reach of the seat, your seat, not the chair seat, towards the ceiling. If it's easy for you to go ahead and touch down, what I want you to do is bring your other block and the block between the knees to the floor, bring them forward, and then stretch into the hands onto the blocks, whether they're high up or they're mid-height or they're flat. And I want you to let the back of the legs really soak up that stretch. So the feet are parallel. If you're on a carpet, that can be a little challenging, but you can work with feeling the heels and the flesh of the foot stretch straight forward from the heel. Head down. Good. Take a few moments here, a few seated lifts, right? Feel the seat lifting. Breathing through the arms all the way down the sleeves into the hands. Great. Okay, now we're going to center the blocks and take that right foot back. And since we're changing it up so much this time today, the sequencing, just kind of keep it simple. If your back knee was on the floor last time for a while, you're going to want to lower it down now. If you came right up with your knee, you can stay with your knee up. If you feel like, oh, I need the knee down and that's better for me, then you bring it to the blanket. Okay. So those of us with having that knee lifting, we're already up. So we have a little bit of that consistency when we lift up the torso, we feel the center line of the ribs, and then feel if you can lift your arms. If it seems more realistic for you to hold on to your hips or to have your hands on the blocks a little bit higher, you take those options and you take into account the center motion, right? Guiding ourselves to find that mid-body lift, which is that age issue, right? The mid-body, keeping the center space, the thoracic to lift up, especially this area in the back that tends to drop forward, trying to use these ribs, the intercostal muscles to engage. So if you have a hand at the wall, that's completely fine. You can dream that you have a wall next to you to hold you up too. Okay, so let's take the arms to support us turning. Now, if you're already up, to go back down and twist might be a bit much. So if you're up, I want you to carefully use the hands onto the hips. And then when you turn to the right, you want to have your legs so they have this wide stance. If that was too much, you can lower your hands down and then go to the right. If you already got there and you don't want to repeat that whole operation, you stay with the feet in a wide stance. Take a couple blocks with you, fumble them over to the right side, right? So whatever direction you are towards the screen, have this wide stance. My right foot is under the chair. And then as I take the blocks down and reach the arms to this wide downward dog, I have the feet parallel and my hips back. And then my hands will go down to the place that I can lower my head between the arms. Maybe your head lowers to the floor. Okay. So keep engaged on that reach of your back muscles. Right? Kind of get a feel for these whole back streams of muscles that are flowing out of the spine through the arms. Just let your head relax. Feel the ribs stretching. Feel the legs stretching. There's not much left out in these wide stance poses, huh? Okay, now when you come back, you can bring your weight from back to forward onto the blocks. Okay. So we're going to do something a little bit unusual for your core strength. It's going to require moving a block off the floor with one hand. So what you're going to want to do is have the left hand on the block and take that block so it's kind of in the middle. Okay, so my block is in the center, it's flat. Now let's say that's too much for you to have the block low. Turn the block up as long as it feels comfortable for your hand to be on that block height. Okay, so you got either low setting or the mid setting with your left hand. And you're going to take your block with your right hand, hold it, and then you're going to turn to your right and lift up the arms. So it's a little bit of that core strength. Depending on what you got for a block, right, it's going to be a little bit of a workout. So feel the turn. And then lower that right hand down, put the right hand down on the block, take that block into the center. I want you to try to go slow with this, not speed. Hold on to the block with the left hand and turn to your left and lift up. Yeah. Feel where the body rotates. Feel the connectivity into your block with your hand on both sides. And then lower that left hand down. And we'll go one more time each side. Try to go with the pattern at your own pace. So I'm going to push my block, I actually move my blanket away, but I'm going to push my block in a little bit closer with my left hand. So when I turn to the right, I feel like I have that center of gravity holding my block up, twist, and then come back down. Now this is to help us with, for all things with half moon today. So just kind of notice when you turn, try the other side, you know, where your inner focus is. Doesn't mean your lens and your eyes are open and looking, but where you navigate directional rotation. And then come back down with your left hand. Okay. Turn to your chair and put your block, so your hand is touching the chair seat to help you get here. You're going to put your block under, well, actually right next to the right foot of the chair. So if you're a little clueless on it, your block is tilted up on the base of the chair. Yeah, so what it's going to be is a placement. So you want to tilt it up at the base of that chair. So when you place your right foot up on that block, it has the chair to stop it. Yeah, the foot of the chair, right at the bottom, the leg of the chair, I guess you could say. So my left foot is spanned, you know, surprisingly a little bit out on that left side. It's parallel, but I don't have it right at my kind of tailbone center. It's a little spanned out to the sense of my left sitting bone. And then lower your elbows down, okay? Feel when you progress the connection through your calf and your hamstring. And that right knee can have a really subtle bend in it, so you're not hyperextending. But get a feel for the sensations. That's not difficult to notice. In the back, whole back of the leg. It's a whole leg pose. Mostly the right leg, but the left leg is like your stability, isn't it? It's your anchor. Yeah, and sense the weight into your arms. How else are you going to peel the stuff open, right? So if it's purely intense, steady, now let's take the hands so that they're on the seat to help you lift up slightly. And then guide the right foot so it steps under the chair seat, right? On that floor pressure, you're going to position your back foot so it's parallel, but now your feet are in two different tracks, but they're both kind of right in a fine line in the same zone, right? So the left heel is going to press back. I want you to really get a feel that you can lift your left heel. You can lower it down. And then you're going to twist to the right, but bring your right hand around your back when you turn to the right. So turn the ribs to the right side, right elbow motions back. Good. So get a feel how this right inner thigh almost tries to squeeze to the midline. This would be a good one to feel the structure of the top of the hip. Okay, now come back down with your hands to the chair seat and help yourself to get a feel for just simply this weight on the left foot behind you. So what we're going to do is start to do one-legged balance. Okay, so we're going to use the left foot as our kind of our anchor. It's been stable for a little while, so it probably knows what the floor does for it. So Go ahead and step your left foot in, not quite halfway, but you're going to step it in a little bit. It depends on your balance. But when you swing that right leg back, I want you to feel the heel push up towards the ceiling. So you're in warrior three. Okay. Get a feel for the standing leg and all the muscles really above the knee that pull up. And then just play with pivoting your right hip open. We just had a revolved triangle pose, so we're still revolving in the pelvis a bit. But feel that right foot turn open, right? Feel the hip rotate like a half moon pose. And then you're going to turn the right thigh facing the toes back down and step that foot under the chair again. Okay, one more time. You're going to step the left foot in a little bit closer towards the chair this time. We're going to stay with this same leg for a few more moments. Swing that right foot back and up, and then pivot at that right hip. Turn the waist. Feel the left thigh stretch in and up, so you're trying to maintain this half moon pose. And then maybe the right arm moves back to that right leg or up towards the ceiling. So you're going to kind of play with that rotation and the possibility of balance. Now you've got a chair to hold you, but it's so different than when you have the wall behind your foot, right? Now your foot is kind of like it lifts, it drops, we want to come back down. You lower your hand to the chair seat, you pivot your right hip, step the foot down anywhere, take the left foot back. Chair dog, you're going to push your hands down and elongate from the wrist to the armpit. Really get the armpit to stretch here. Head between the arms, knees slightly bend. Armpit, armpit. Right, get some wisdom in the armpits to open. Head relaxing. Breathe. That feels pretty good. Easier than half moon. Okay, now good. Let the knees bend. Good work. Take the block over to the left leg of the chair and switch the side. Left foot steps up. Like it steps up, it leans the whole bottom of the foot up to the block. Get that feel for the right leg sliding behind you. So you can bring your elbows on the chair seat. Ooh, deeply motion into your calf. Yeah, and fluctuate your focus here. Right, notice where the boundary is in your leg, where it kind of is at the edge. And then maybe you get yourself a little wiggle room, right? Maybe you wiggle your tail a little side to side. And then kind of feel if the kind of the flesh can have any kind of flap of movement or if it's really rigid, right? It might be really rigid in this pose. So when we go into a deep, this pose is called Parsvo Tanasana, right? So we're really sensing that length in that front, the calf, the back lines. Right, so we have both sides of the torso leaning down evenly. You know, the body in the top is almost like this canopy of weight surging down. And now when I put my hands on the chair seat and I slide my left foot under the chair, so it's, you know, the foot is similar direction, right, as it last was, but it just doesn't have anything under it, right? So it doesn't really know any different. You just took away the chunk under the foot. So the leg muscles have the same behavior they just had just because the toes are down now. So when my back foot is parallel, can you work your way right now to bring your left hand to your hip and turn your waist? Yeah, always working with your balance, right, on your mat and your prop. So if you feel something's giving, right, you might have to reset yourself. So turn, your left arm can reach behind you so it rests a little bit more. It doesn't have to be prim and proper holding your hip. Good. And just get that feel of that rotation through the ribs, turning. And maybe a little bit of lifting and rotating, lifting, rotating, breathing. Okay, now this might not be super obvious, the connection this has to that one-legged balance, but I think it's the second time around you'll notice some of these similarities. So the base leg is going to be the back leg coming up. So this rib texture is rotating. Now this is pretty easy to get your arm up and balance. If you were going to do that, we didn't do that last side, so I won't recruit that position really. But this is what we will do when we balance, right? This arm will go up. So this rib cage having this kind of nice sculpted pattern in here of awareness might help us. But just to know that. So when you come down with your left hand, I want you to step the right foot in. Now, how far you step it in is all up to you. So if you step it way in and you feel good about that, that's okay. The only thing I find that could be harmful is that's going to put more weight on my wrists, right? If I step closer and closer and closer. So I'm going to try to get just a little bit of step in and then swing that left leg back up. Use the chair. This is a pose, the restorative patterns where we use a wall or we use blocks or a chair with our hands. So the back leg can lift and then get a feel of reaching through the left heel and squaring your hips to start. So my hips are square. All right, so if you look down at your right leg and then you kind of peek up at your hips, it's pretty level there, okay? Now, when I lower down, now you could try to turn your left hip open right now and feel, but noticing the catch in the hip, the right hip. So what I want you to try for is to lower the left foot down, step the right foot in, several inches. And then when you lift up your left foot now, the gauge of the correct alignment is going to be sensed by your weight from your right hip directly down to your heel. And then you're going to turn your left hip, turning open and out, push through the heel, and then feel if you can lift your left arm up. Likely your tighter hip might give you a little better balance sometimes. It's kind of interesting. Sometimes that's true for this one. Sometimes you get up, you come back down, you get back up, you put your hand down, you keep your leg up. Those types of opportunities are here for you. So feel where that opportunity is, whether it feels like an opportunity or you're going to be an opportunist on this one. So my hand could come down and still keep the half moon pose, right? My left hand could come down. You could be on your right elbow for this pose, right? And have your left arm up. That might even feel more supportive for you, but it is still a little more flexibility required to do that because of your hamstring, okay? Now, when the left hand comes down, what I want us to work with is to pivot the hips in midair. This is challenging, to be in midair, moving your hips around. So kind of feel how it turns open, it pivots down. Now, as you step back with the left foot, bend your right knee, bring your hands back up to your hip, and then step your left foot up on the chair, okay? Bring your left foot up so now you have consistent balance on your right leg over time. So your left foot is on the chair, and then we'll turn to the left so our spine twist gets higher. Right hand on the outer left leg or knee, and left arm is back. The chair is really nice to have for this twist, but you still have to do a lot of balance to get here. So if it's a little bit challenging for you to do this and you want to get your body closer to a wall spot, right? You could always do this by kind of maybe go to the other side of the chair near the wall and do the same thing, but you feel a little more supported. So find what works for a few more moments. It's not a forever balance, but it is some strength around your knees. Okay, and then we bring both arms up, turn towards the left leg. Good. Now, as you lower the left foot down, I want you to feel both of your heels pressing down. Try to let your toes lift up for a second. Lift up the toes, lift up the fingers. Don't lift up your nose, just your toes. And then as you step into your left foot, make that imprint. Lift the right foot, step it up onto the chair, right? You got the right foot up now. And then bring your left hand to the knee and twist to the right and turn. Feel where the weight distribution goes from your back foot forward to your right leg, and your right arm could be reaching your elbow, bending your hand to your back of your pelvis, or the arm could be open. It's not a conditional pose where you have to have your hand up in the air. So I'd rather have you notice the sense of strict service this left leg has to your core rhythm. So if your hand on your hip is a lot more certain for that and not straining your shoulder, then do that. If your hand lifting and reaching back is good, feel the response in your hip lid on that left thigh. Feel the twist. Okay, now when the waist is trying to lift up out of the mid-body lift, we're going to keep that turn to that right side for a second. And then we're going to go ahead and actually turn back to the right leg first, to the center. We're going to step the right foot down for a second. I want you to get a feel for the weight into your heels, the shoulders back. Breathe. Okay, you're going to take tree pose, whether you're facing the wall and you're trying to stay in your focus. Right foot to the inside of the left knee, or you're going to step on the chair with your right foot, my preference. And then I keep that inner thigh stretching open without having to work on this position, foot to the leg. So you choose foot to chair or right foot to the left inner leg. You can pull the foot up if you want, but you can also use the chair. Bring your arms up. Now, if you're with the chair, with your right foot on the chair, the knee open, feel the arms working their way up. Yeah, if your foot is on your thigh and there's something about that seems like it's giving you some more balance, just check into that. The chair is nice to get a little more kind of spread of balance in the leg tissues, but we don't need to energize what's better than the other. So find what works for you, chair or leg to leg. Try to get that lift into the spinal column. Whether you change your footing onto the chair or back to the leg is up to you. Now arms are going to be separate, whether the hands are in front of the heart or they're straight up to the sky. We're going to lower down that right foot, and then when you prepare to change sides, sense your balance in both feet, okay? And then start to lift the left foot up, and whether you turn and use the chair for your foot, noticing that you want to feel some evenness with your legs if you're using the chair. So if I put my foot on my chair, I want to both stamp into my left foot and my right foot, and then use that inner lift to bring your arms up. Feel that side body reach, okay? The challenge with the chair might be that you get a little kind of punchy with your ribs. They tend to kind of punch forward. You get really kind of exuberant with getting the balance. And when you're without the chair, you might notice that it goes the other way with your ribs. They kind of drop back. So work on that frontal hip bones on that standing leg, lifting up. Big deal. We're going to core work. So try to let that mid-body motion up. Breathe. And that's a lot of standing work today. I know, but time is flying. Okay, now when the hands come down, or they're in front of you, they lower you down. Take your left leg so it comes back to center. Shake it out. Shake out the legs, shake out the shoulders and the arms. And let's take our chair. So we're going to move it a little bit away from the wall so that we can actually, we all have folding chairs right now, I've noticed. So we can, actually, let's see. I don't know, maybe do you have a folding chair? You give me a thumbs up or down. Okay, good. All right, so take a bolster. So it's extending away from your chair, okay? And if you back bends are a little bit edgy for you, you're gonna wanna put a blanket or a block on top of that bolster, okay? So a blanket's okay, a block is a little bit more sure because it's a little more height. And you don't have to go very far back that way. That way, when you lie back, you know, you can see that it's really not that far of a drop down than it would be if you were on your bolster on the floor. It's not that much farther, but it looks different, doesn't it? So step through your chair so that you're in the yoga chair, that you had space between the bar and the seat. And you want to be close enough to the wall with your feet so that when you do push back in a few poses, you have the wall to support you, okay? So I'm a little close to the wall. I can kind of tell, a little bit close. So I want to be able to push so my knees aren't going to jam into the wall, okay? So take a ball actually would work fine, or a block between your knees. And I want you to scoot a little forward on the chair. So again, you don't want to be so close that you've rammed into the wall with your knees. So you might have to still gauge this. And then bring your hands back to the chair seat. Now, if you got a blanket tucked on your chair, you might kind of roll it up to your seat and then reach your hands back onto the chair seat and move your chest open. Yeah, spend the energy on the right amount of clutching to the seat. So if I'm pushing and clutching and kind of tugging, I want you to feel your shoulders move back and your collarbones spread open. Okay? Keep that collar open, right? Just kind of visualize that, the collarbone open. And then bring your right hand to the bar of the chair and start turning to your left, but we keep the knees moving towards the wall, meaning they're not twisting. They have something between them, and then your left hand might slide back on the seat of the chair to help you create a little bit more robust, thick back ribs twist. But you might have your hand just where you had it, and you're working on that rotation. So we're warming up the spine. We're getting it warmer and warmer for the back bend. So feel that motion. Breathing. Good. Now when you come back center, we're going to pause for a second. We have our front paws on our chair bar. And I want you to feel where your body has that ability to lift up. Now, hands back, just like we did a moment ago, collarbones wide. Left hand on the bar of the chair, the back bar. And then find the body twisting. Don't hurry the turn. Yeah, so the 2 points of travel challenge here for the twist is the knee staying forward towards the wall and the collarbones open. It's as if you take all these little pieces of the class, especially when we get to this final placement of spine work, where all the pieces count, right? So when you turn, you don't want to eliminate these factors. So if you put your hand on your sacrum, right, the base of the spine, you kind of feel that indent. If you notice that is twisting, but you're doing it incorrect, right? So we want to be twisting above that space. So that's important to know. That's like center bone, sacred bone, sacrum. So the sides of that bone, right, the sacral iliac, right, half of the sacral iliac joint, you want all that to be very like sturdy. So when I turn, it's actually a joint of stability, not mobility. So you're turning your ribs. And now come back to center, move the blanket back and down, okay? You can keep your block or remove it. I'm going for the freedom with it. I like the sense of my feet being a little bit in a wider stance and giving my knees room to move a little out and then try to bring them back in. So I'm gonna hold the bar of the chair. I'm gonna scoot my tush right to the edge of the seat. And then as I lower back, I want to make sure that that sacrum bone, right, is feeling like it's lowering down. I hold my bar of my chair. Now I want you to be a little cautious here when you lower down onto your block. If the block is too easy for you, you don't use the block, you bring your head to the bolster. But you know, if it feels like, well, this is kind of comfortable, I could go further, but it's comfortable. You just let it be this perspective of being, you know, in this back bend, this pretty full back bend, because my hips are so high from the ground. It's a fuller back bend than what we usually do. Right? My hips are really high up. So I'm going to slide my hands under the chair seat to the rungs of the chair, the legs, and then let my elbows relax. But I am holding the chair. Okay. Now this is a little bit more flexion in my neck than is probably responsible, but if your back was tight and you had to go that way, that would be what you do. But if your head goes down and it's a little bit more comfortable in your neck and it's a lot more stretch in your stomach, you take it. But if your guts feel like they're not supported here, you want more under your head, and it might be blankets, right? So if you're recovering from something in your core, you might have blankets under your head, so you're maybe 2 on the bolster, or you might pass on the pose, right? But here's a nice way to kind of work through those areas in the core to get that circulation back into anything that may be occurring, history of injury or trauma. So feel the shoulders moving back and down. Give it a few moments. You can be here, you know, a good minute or 2, but we're only going to be here maybe a minute. Those that have the hands holding underneath the chair, I want you to feel that pull on the rungs. Feel the chest open. Keep the legs steady so you feel the wall with your feet. Your toes are up a little bit at the wall. And then take your hands up to the side of the chair, right? The arms of the chair. You can bring your hands up there. You'll feel your elbows on the chair seat. And then with the elbows pressing down, you're going to lift. So you tilt your chin up, breathe. I know it's a bit of an intense pose. And then you're going to lift up your head and then walk your hands up the back bar. And then when you come up, bring your hands to the wall and scoot your tush back a little bit and take a forward motion with your spine to release your spinal column. Head might be center of the arms for a few moments. Spread the armpits. Breathe. Now, was that intense? Maybe been a little intense in the back, right? So we want the back to spread. So you want to feel your feet push a little bit into the wall so that serves the spine, the lower back, to let that stretch. So we're doing just a couple more poses to complete the practice. You can tell it's going to be forward bend and inversion now. Now the back might be able to go more and more. So if this is limiting you right now, you're going to turn to the other side of the chair and reach down to the legs of the chair. Those that want to stay here, this is fine. This might be, you're still trying to recover, okay? You might even put your arms on the bar of the chair and let your head lower down. That's taught too. But some of us are going to be just fine trying to scoot our way till we turn the other way on the chair. And then we can reach down onto the bolster, right? You can tip it up under your forehead. This is nice. Feet as wide as my mat, okay? You can bring your hands down to the legs of the chair and bring your head to the bolster, okay? If you have a bolster blanket, a bolster block, that could be nice too. But release the spine. Let your spine sensation elongate all the way. Now feel if you can scoot your feet a little bit wider, just a tiny bit, stretching the inner thighs. Now, when we do come up from this position, I'm going to give you a few moments of kind of contemplation of where you will complete your practice for your inversion, because we want to be there a couple minutes. So your few options here will be the chair shoulder stand, right? Some of you might do that. Or the legs up the wall. So it's one or the other. So the nice thing about the chair shoulder standers is that you're already kind of in a chair right now, so you don't have to do a whole lot of change but move it away from the wall, maybe. So when you come up, if you're going to do chair, I just want to show you this briefly. I'm pretty good distance from the wall. I could put my bolster, turn it on the feet of the chair. Now this way I'm not getting up and down out of my chair and my blood pressure shifting. I'm sort of okay, right? This position. So then you would take your body, so then you turn, maybe you have a blanket on top of your bolster, you bring your legs up. I'm not going to give a full tutorial on that today. Those of you that know chair shoulder stand, you can take it here. Those that are not going to do that are going to take the chair off of their mat. They can sit down on your bolster to get your chair away, okay? And what you'll take is your bolster right up, or a blanket or two blankets next to the wall, and you're going to bring your hip next to the wall. This is good. Now I changed the direction of my room. I got to go on my other hip now. Good for me. Okay, you want a blanket, you want a sandbag, you want some support underneath you. You know, if you've been doing legs at the wall for a millennium and you think you're going to change it up, you could put a full blanket, right, like so. And then you could have your blanket number 2 on the other side. This can be kind of nice too. It's really very calming. So when I get myself upside down, I've got all this padding underneath me. So you can feel how the similarities this has to, head is on a blanket, to the forward bend as far as the stretch in the back of the legs with the legs up the wall, people. The chair shoulder stand is a complete lift up inversion, right? So it's not going to be a hamstring relatable event. But as I put my sand on my feet one more time, unless you're in shoulder stand, no sand on the feet there. Let the legs center onto the wall and feel the width of the back of the pelvis. That just seems to come into focus so often in repeated conversations with these pose patterns. So it's almost as if I want my legs to be in this kind of tunnel. I have tunnel vision to see them, but there's separation at the knees, not too much. But then the awareness, it's like this triangle awareness that goes to my feet close, down to my hips. There's a width. The pelvis has that width onto the chair or the bolster or blankets. And then I stretch my elbows open. If you're on the chair with shoulder stand, you're going to keep your arms under the chair and hold and maintain that sincere dedication. Let the eyes rest. If your eyes are slightly open, for the gaze looking and keeping the eyes in a quiet environment with their movement. If you have any hardware on your face, like glasses, you probably want to remove those because that changes your facial tone, right? It brings some pressure around the eyes, the muscles, the facial muscles. And then let the weight of your head be comfortable. Belly moves with the breath. We all share that in common, whatever pose we're practicing. Feel the skin sensations with the breath. Now, as you flush the legs and you reverse gravity's downward pull, it rests the organs. Even though the pose might have a little bit of energy in it, like a little bit of effort. The structure has the effort of direction, but the organs are reversed, right? The gravitational flow through them is the opposite of prolapse. So you're resting them, reversing the flow through them. So with the diaphragm in its direction on the inhale, now it moves away from that gravitational pull, right? You've got to resist right now with the diaphragm direction, but on the exhale, it's much easier and calming. So let's take a few more of these moments just to combine the focus of breathing, structure, and restoring wellness. If you're in the chair, you're going to start to shift by bending the knees and putting the feet on the back bar and place the knees so they release open into Baddha Konasana. If you're at the wall, you're going to start to move your feet away, bend your knees. Feel that kind of motion of balance in the hips, and then move your sand away and bring your knees out and your feet together at the wall. Now, however your cobbler's pose is, can you move the knees away and they're moving towards the wall space or towards the chair, whichever pose, and the hands could go to the legs if you're at the wall, and feel the directional position of moving them towards the wall.